Welcome to the For Real Though Show, the podcast with a purpose for the peoples. I am your host, Christopher Keith. Thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe, do all the good things to help with that algorithm. We appreciate you. Okay, get this good message out here. So today we're going to talk about love. Okay, and the question is, well, I'm going to pose a question, and then you guys can like comment, on the video and stuff, and tell me what you think. But the question is regarding love. Specifically, and I'll review this again, but specifically, love in terms of romantic love, family love, like that. And the question is love unconditional? Is love unconditional? So I was having a conversation, with a friend a few weeks back, and we were having dinner, and we were talking about love, in this case, romantic love. And in a relationship sense, he said that he dated a woman who told him that she loved him unconditionally. And he said, well, that's impossible. She did not love him unconditionally. And he proved himself to be right because he wasn't a good man to her, and she eventually left him. Now, I question his logic that the sister's love isn't or wasn't unconditional. And I found it curious that he believed that despite his behavior towards her, which he admitted wasn't good, the fact that she didn't stay there and take whatever he was dishing out, he concluded that that meant that her love for him was less than authentic or unconditional. So I have a theory, and I'm going to share that theory here, okay, when it comes to love. And my theory is that love is a decision, right? People talk about the feelings of love, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I think feelings come with love. But love is a decision. It's an intentional choice. And, like I said, I'm explaining, you tell me what you think. You know, so first of all, love is like a fluid word in the English language because it covers a, spectrum of colors, right? In some other languages, there are many different words for love. Like biblically speaking, there are many, right? But English is just limited. Love. I love you, baby. I love my dog. I love Patty LaBelle, right? So those are all different kind of loves. So English is, it's limited, right? But for the second again, for this conversation, we're going to talk about, romantic love and family love. So how does love correlate in decision terms? So think of a person you love romantically, for instance, right? By definition, it's unconditional because regardless of the rose-colored glasses that we put on when we like someone, we know going in that the motherfucker that we dealing with ain't gonna be perfect, right? We know that there are flaws, skeletons, all kinds of shit in their game, right? Because that describes all of us, right? When we say we decide to love someone, it's saying that I'm willing to work through these flaws, all while secretly hoping that these flaws are not going to overwhelm us, right? Or that some sort of hidden trauma that we or our partner has will not blow up the whole foundation. If love is not conditional, if love is not unconditional, then it means that it's, earned based on performance, right? Meaning if I do good, you will love me. If I don't do well, then you won't. Okay? Now, for me, that isn't love, and it's not to say that love does not perform, and I want to be real careful because I know some people, because of the situations we've been in, because of losses we've taken, heartbreaks we've endured, disappointments we've had, that, we tend to take a statement and just go all the way overboard with it, right? I got some friends, who I know are like out here dating and stuff. Uh, and they they tend to use a lot of hyperbole when it comes to the dating scene and what they expect of a man or what they expect of a woman, and if a man don't do this then he ain't worth that and all that other kind of stuff. And so therefore, even if you suggest that a woman should do such and such, just in general, Like the feeling is to get very defensive and say, "Oh, wait a minute, but the man, he needs to blah blah blah. What about him? What about, you know what I mean?" And so it goes for men. Sometimes you can say, "Well, as a brother, you need to blah blah blah," and then guys be like, "Whoa, well, women, but they don't." You know what I'm saying? So it's like we got a lot of stuff in there, and it doesn't allow us to just like kind of focus on one thing at a time and just be able to talk about something without overgeneralizing, right? So please take my language, not to be absolute and all encompassing for everyone's situation. These are very general terms. These are very general treaties that I'm talking about, okay? Uh, so again, it's not to say that love doesn't perform, right? It's quite the opposite. Love is an action word, right? Love shows up, it's proven, solidified, strengthened in loyalty when it is given to us, really when we feel like we least deserve it, right? And when we are not at our best, and especially when we can't perform at all, right? So when we're not at our best, when we can't do shit, you know what I'm saying? When we asked out, that's really, if someone loves you, that's when love is going to show up the most, right? That's when you need love to show up the most. When you can't perform, right? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't perform. And again, because if you love someone, you're going to be motivated to do certain things for them, with them, to them, right? Uh, but there are times when you're just not going to be at your best, right? And I suggest that when you really find out if you're really loved, if you really find out, it's when you can't do shit for yourself, when you asked out, like I said, when you like, hey man, it wasn't nothing I could do, I failed, or what have you. And when somebody still looks at you and says, hey, I got you, I love you, I believe in you, we're going to get past this. Well, that's when right? A decision was made, though. That was a decision, and that decision was to see beyond your performance, okay? So, characteristics of love, okay? And I'm going to go biblical here, just because I believe it's a good example. 1 Corinthians 13 talks about how love is patient, it's kind, right? Those are action words. It's not envious, it's not boastful, it's not arrogant, it's not rude, it's not selfish. That's a very important thing, that it's not selfish, okay, or irritable, right? It does not keep a record of wrongs, right? It rejoices in truth, always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres, right? So again, these are all action words, right? They're all action words. And so it's not a noun where you could just, or an adjective, right? It's an action word. Love is always moving, it's in motion, right? And between two people, it's never 50-50, with apologies to Teddy Pendergrass, if you know, because giving half of an effort in anything in life ain't gonna cut it, truthfully, right? And we're seldom at 100, right? We're, we're not always at 50, we're not always at 70, we're not always at 90, right? Sometimes we're at a goddamn 25. And, love from a person on a 70 can pull you up to a 50 or a 60, and that may be enough to get you by for the rest of your day. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to the magical powers of love as it relates to humans, I refer to the great scholar Albert Leonis Green, who proclaimed some years long ago simply that love will make you do right, make you do wrong, make you come home early, make you stay out all night long. Can't you just imagine Dr. King saying that love will make you come home early, make you stay out all night long? I could just see Dr. King preaching it. Anyway, the blues is the blues, right? So anyway, but yo, is he lying? Is he lying? No, he is not lying. Love will make you climb up telephone poles, like do all the things, right? You know what I'm saying? Even in the wild kingdom, right? You be seeing steer and stuff, or deers. They be fighting and stuff. Rams be fighting for that love. Well, they might be fighting for a little something else too, if you know what I'm saying. Like, but you know what I mean. Okay. Anyway, but here's the rub of where I believe the sister was saying to my man's, right? The one I talked about before. Love in itself is what it is, right? It doesn't need permission or an explanation to manifest itself. However, we cannot forget just because we have love for a person, it doesn't mean we don't have love for self. And if we are to have love for self, then that love for self has borders and boundaries, right? Loving someone unconditionally doesn't mean taking an unlimited amount of punishment, gaslighting, inconsideration, lack of sensitivity, or respect. And the truth of the matter, in my humble opinion, is that you can love someone's dirty draws for real. And based on how they consistently treat you, say, there could be a situation, where you could look up and say, hey, look, I love your dirty draws, but I just can't fuck with you like that no more, right? And a person who is willing to take that step, no matter the hurt and pain that is associated with it, is only proven that loving the self is just as vitally important as extending love towards another, right? We ain't talking about rough patches or a season of challenges. I'm talking about an issue of consistency, right? What a person consistently does over a long period of time is not choosing to do what it takes to show that they choosing you like you choosing them. Then that's a different situation than, hey, we disagree, we going through some stuff, we ain't seen eye to eye sometimes, we have a misunderstanding, right? Those are two totally separate different things, right? It's the same principle, as a close family or friend, like close, friend or family member, rather, right? You can love someone in your family, right? But if their behavior is unhealthy for you, then you can love them from a distance, right? You can set boundaries and if necessary, close the door completely if the person's behavior is detrimental to your peace and or mental, physical, or spiritual safety. I know people who love their parents, right? Or love a parent. But in order to keep their own sanity or self-worth, they had to cut ties or disassociate with that parent, right? Because the situation was just too unhealthy for them, right? The love didn't leave, but again, love without a check and a balance of requited love in return, including the love of self, is only an invitation for abuse and misery. And that form of love is distorted and misappropriated, right? It's damaging to the self and can lead to a tremendous amount of suffering, right? Love that is only extended outwardly and abandons the self in the midst, right? It's like an autoimmune disease where, the body betrays itself, except it's the heart betraying itself. You see what I'm saying? So, let me explain what I've learned about love in relationships. And I can say this because most all mine have failed, okay? And it could have been my fault, could have been her fault, or it could have been nobody's fault, right? But here's my thing. Love by itself, it's a hell of a start, right? And its foundation says that you're willing to make a go at this thing with another person. But here's what you need to know. The most important thing to know about relationships is that love by itself would never be enough. The four CMDs told us a long time ago, love is a house, right? That house is a place where you live. It's a sacred space, like your standard physical house, right? It's where you lay your head, it's where you relax, eat, sleep, commune, have sex, take a shit, shave, and shower, right? Your house is a space no one shares in depth without actually living there, right? In their house, there are many rooms. Rooms have different purposes. You got a bedroom, you got a bathroom, maybe a family room where everyone gathers. You got a workout room, a separate bedroom for guests, right? These rooms represent the different parts of you and your upbringing, your training, your joys, your traumas, your fears. They are all there with you, right? In sharing that space, back to the Force MDs, love is a house, you got the key. That key is access. Access in a way which you are already proactively and indefinitely invited. Now put all of that in your gumbo, and this is what I know for sure. The most vitally important tool you can have in your toolbox to make a relationship successful is your ability to communicate effectively. And by communicate, I mean both speaking and listening, listening to understand and relate, not to speak or answer back. You got to understand people are complicated creatures and that we're not all the same. And where you are strong, your partner might not be as strong. That doesn't make you better than them or worse. And you don't have a right to dictate where they should be. Excuse me. You were not there when they were growing up. And most of our internal challenges can be traced back to our childhood. Did we feel protected? Were we neglected by the people who were supposed to protect us? And most of us haven't even done the work to seriously realize where we are and why we are in the place in our particular journey, you know? So when we have unresolved trauma, it never goes away. We can set it aside, but it always comes back. Like right when you least expect it, or when you get back into that same routine, or you do that thing over and over again, as soon as it gets quiet, it's going to come back. That is until it's confronted and dealt with, right? You understand what I'm saying? You're dealing with a complicated and complex human being. No matter how nice and sweet they may be, regardless of their good intentions. And while love may be unconditional, making that love perfected in grace takes skill, patience, insight, wisdom, and a shit ton of humility. All while standing on your square principally. Some of us, we don't know how to take real love when we get it. And it takes a mature person. It takes a mature and healed person, to display intentional love with understanding and purpose. But it also takes a mature person to receive that love, right? Without taking advantage of it, taking it for granted, or sabotaging it. By sabotaging, I mean just doing things intentionally to fuck it up because you never believed you deserved the love in the first place. Now, I can't speak for the friend I had the conversation with that I mentioned at the beginning, but I imagine when he told his sister that it was impossible that she could love him unconditionally, he set out to prove himself right with his actions going forward. For him, it's like, I'll show you how much of an asshole I can be and then see what you'll do, right? So, with that, finally, let me go back to something I said earlier in a recent podcast. Real life is not like TV. There are no happy endings when it comes to love and relationships. Love in action is a constant that has to be practiced daily. It's always ongoing and never ceases. Okay? Aren't you hungry every day? Okay, right? Leftovers are good, but after a few days, that spaghetti is going to spoil and lose its original core of greatness, right? Love is being willing to express itself, right, in a new dish with fresh ingredients, right? Then going back to the Bible, even says first natural, then spiritual. So the work you do or the meal you prepped at the beginning of the week is going to be different than the work that is needed down the road, right? Work must be done nonetheless. So in summation, love according to C-Mac is a decision in which feelings become involved, right? As we said earlier. I didn't talk about the feelings aspect of it as much, but love involves an investment. And where there is an investment, there will be feelings and emotions attached, right? Because in an investment, there are no guarantees, right? Anybody says there's a guaranteed investment, it's probably a scam to it, right? So every time you invest something, even if it's your money, you're going to have some feelings about it. If you lose it, you're going to have some feelings about it if it increases, right? So again, there's an investment, so there will be feelings. There are emotions, but love in itself is not an emotion. It is not a feeling. Feelings will come, feelings will go. I like you today. I feel this today. I don't feel like it today. You know what I'm saying? That's how that goes, right? Love is going to be a lot more consistent because love will perform even when it don't feel like it. Because your feelings are not going to, they just, all of our feelings, right? They're all wishy-washy, right? We're people, right? So, so love is unconditional, but it has an intentional, it does have an intentional investment. But with that means there isn't, like It doesn't mean that there isn't a cost to keep it. Okay. There is a cost to keeping love, right? Remember, love is a gift, but it's not a given. It's not a given. So let me know what you think, right? Agree, disagree, you know what I'm saying? Let me know, comment, and like I said, subscribe, do all the things, and let me know how you see the issue. Did I leave something out? Did I miss something obvious? I'll at your mans. And thank you for joining me. See you next time on the For Real Though Show. Peace.